What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to expand on last week's discussion where I presented this list right here, which is the number of photos I'm satisfied with from my various trips designed during the fall through the years, organized by year. And I noticed two trends in there, one between 2014 and 2015, and one between 2020 and 2021. The first one between 2014 and 2015 was when I started focusing my attention more on the smaller scenes. And after that, I found myself being a bit more productive. In the early days, it was more so the grand scenes, the iconic scenes that I was pursuing. And then between 2020 and 2021, which happens to be when I started pursuing photography full-time as a career. But after that point, I was far more productive. And I mentioned in last week's video that I have been pushing myself a bit harder in the field, which has been paying off, though the experience in the field isn't quite what it used to be back in the early days. So since making that video last week, I've been trying to think about what specific techniques I've been doing in recent years that can perhaps be attributed to being more productive in the field. And I came up with two things I think explain it. So the first is, well, in 2021, I started using this guy. So this is a composition finder. I made a video about this in the past, which I'll link to up top there. But this, I think, has been extremely important for me, partially because with large format, it's a pain to set up the camera if you don't really know that you're going to be taking a picture. You can't just pull it out and evaluate a composition that way. First of all, it just takes time to do. It's bulky, and also it's hard to see the image on the ground glass. So by having this with me at all times, anytime I see something that in any way sparks anything, I'll pull this out of my pocket and then I can see immediately if there's potential with that subject. Sometimes there's a very obvious subject, in which case I know that clearly setting up the camera and taking a picture right now will work just fine. In those situations, this allows me to fine-tune that composition a little bit more. It allows me to notice certain distractions. I very rarely find myself having to crop afterwards now that I've been using this. But for those scenes where I probably wouldn't have pulled out my camera in the past, maybe I would have been hiking past something and seen an interesting root on the ground or something and been like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Nah, I'll get it on the way back. And then I never do. But with this, I can pull this out and I will know immediately if that subject has potential, because sometimes some of the photos that I really like are ones I almost didn't even notice. It didn't have that amazing, like, hey, this is clearly a good photo. It's, hey, there's a little something here. And this allows me to figure that out. So I'm a huge fan of carrying this. I have this in my pocket at all times. I sleep with this in my pocket. Every time I leave my truck to go wandering for the day on these trips, I make sure I have this in my pocket. It's a matter of, checking for the keys, checking for the wallet, checking for the phone, checking for this. So really, really important. And I attribute that to me being far more successful since that trip in 2021. The other thing is more of a change of my approach and the way that I debate what I'm going to do and what subjects I'm going to pursue. One of the things that comes with visiting a location again and again and again is you really get to know that area. And so I find that now I have a multitude of subjects I'm kind of keeping an eye on these trips. And I find that having a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D really is beneficial, because I can change whatever it is I'm going to do based on the conditions. Versus the early days, I had more of a sense of tunnel vision, where there was one particular photo I wanted to get and I kind of ignored everything else along the way. So by visiting a location again and again, I have a multitude of subjects I'm thinking about. And I find that physically talking my way through what my plan will be for the day, or even how to pursue a composition, helps tremendously. And I do mean physically talking out loud. Sometimes in the morning, I will have an idea of a couple subjects of what I want to pursue. And I will actually say out loud, okay, so I can do this, I can go here, I can do this. If the conditions are these, There's something about talking through the process of what conditions I need for a variety of different subjects that really helps to think through all the various options. And it helps to avoid a sense of tunnel vision that I had early on in the trips. So as an example of tunnel vision and how talking through can actually be quite beneficial. Back in 2019, I went on my normal spring backpacking trip to the canyons of southern Utah. And there's this one canyon that I was visiting that year, and it's about a 5 or 6 mile hike to get to this canyon. And right at the end of the hike, you have to cross a river, and then on the other side of the river is basically where I'm going to be camping. And there's a couple times you have to cross the river, but the main thing is that you don't see the river until you have really dedicated to that hike. And the river was running higher that year. And so I ended up going for a little bit of a swim with the pack, and it really wasn't great. So I didn't really have a good mindset after that, because then it was a matter of trying to find subjects, and I just wasn't really feeling it. And so the following day, I spent some time in the canyon taking pictures. By then it was the late afternoon, and I'm like, I just want to get back. I'm over this. So in order to get back, I have to cross that river again. But to cross the river is running through a bit of a channel. There's a high bank on one side, there's the river, and then on the other side, there's a side canyon which the trail goes up, and these big walls on either side. So there's a very narrow stretch in which you can cross a river, and it's flowing so much that you can't walk up river. It's just too much of a force. And so there was another person there as well, and we were both able to get across the river to that side canyon and then hike back. But it was kind of sketchy, and it wasn't anything I would recommend. But I had this sense of tunnel vision of, in order to get back to the truck, as now the sun is getting lower in the sky, I have to get across this river, I have to get back to the trail. Here's the thing, if I had stopped and if I had talked to myself and debated what are my options here, I would have remembered that if I had hiked about 300 feet downstream, now the river wasn't flowing through a channel anymore. I could have crossed it. It still would have been a bit much, but I would have crossed it without any problem. And although I wouldn't have made it back to that particular side canyon, there was another way that I could have gotten up over that canyon wall and then made my way back to the trail. So there was another way that was completely safe to get back, but I didn't even think of it at the moment because I had that sense of tunnel vision. So now when I go on these trips, I make a point of talking to myself, because I can talk my way through things, whether it's something like that river crossing, or whether it's debating which particular subjects I want to pursue, or when to, or how to. There's something about getting the brain working in that way that I find to be very, very beneficial. So that is another thing I think I attribute between talking my way through which subjects to pursue, as well as which compositions and how to compose them. And I gotta say, doing video kind of helps, because what am I doing? I'm talking my way through the process as I'm doing the video. So, but I think those two strategies have really helped. But now that I am more productive, I do miss those times, like in the early trips, when I'm just wandering around aimlessly, not being very productive, but more immersed in nature and noticing more things. So I think for me going forward, I need to find that balance of being productive, but also taking time to enjoy the experience, which I gotta say, it's tough to do, because there's times I'll say, I'm just gonna take a day off, I'm just gonna not take any pictures, and what am I doing? I'm going back and grabbing my camera and taking pictures. So that's something I gotta work on, but I think those two strategies have helped me tremendously, and maybe they can help you too. After this, in the coming weeks, I'll start sharing the Zion fall videos. I've been working on those in the background. And also, as a reminder, my zine, I still have like 50 copies or so left, and you can find that in the link up top there, and I can send those to you pretty quickly. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.